Hi, welcome to Studio 14. I'm Ginny Sawyer, and with me today is Mike Calhoun. He's a park supervisor in our parks department, but he's also head of our West Nile Virus mosquito control program. And we're going to talk about that today. So Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, we are at the end of the season. Hopefully there are no more mosquitoes out there.
Yes, I love 30 degrees.
That works. Excellent. So I wanted to have you on to talk about West Nile and our program for a couple different reasons. One, we are at the end of the season and it's a good time to talk about how it went. But two, it felt like, I don't know, that there was a high level of interest, obviously, at the end of the season when we sprayed. And so I just wanted to have a conversation about that and actually kind of provide the background. How long have we had a mosquito control program?
Well, as everybody can remember, in 2003 we had an outbreak year. West Nile virus had made its way from New York City all the way across the country and landed in Colorado in 2003. And we started reacting and did some preparation, but we never knew exactly how it was going to materialize until it got here. So unfortunately for us in Larimer County, and especially in Fort Collins, Loveland area, Windsor, we're in a hot spot, all the way down to Longmont. We're in a pretty good hot spot because of the environmental conditions for the types of mosquitoes that carry
Water,
it.
temperature.
The great irrigation systems we have, the river that runs through
ditches.
town. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
All that stuff compounds it. And so we've had issues since 2003. The current program that we're running under was established in 2008.
Okay.
We put together a technical advisory committee of content experts and concerned citizens that came up with recommendations that were adopted in 2008 for our program response guidelines and our policy. And so we have been operating underneath that program since then. And we had a really nice period of 2008 through 2011 where we didn't have a lot of West Nile virus activity.
Yeah.
And that was nice. We enjoyed those
really
years.
Nice.
Now, at the same time, in the background, we still did all the things in our program response guidelines that were required when we hit certain thresholds. The communication piece, the utility bill inserts that people probably see in June, July time period that talk about draining their standing water, dressing appropriately, wearing repellent, things like that. We were doing all those things for those years, but luckily we just didn't have the West Nile virus activity.
Well, we were also still doing the larviciding and trapping and monitoring. And
Yep, that's a major part of our program for our contract with Colorado Mosquito Control. Is over 90% of the program is the larvicide program that the staff goes out and dip tests different larval sites throughout town. There's over 1,400 sites that they have mapped in town.
1,400, wow, okay.
And some of them are visited on a weekly basis, depending on the type of site, how the water comes in and goes out.
Yep.
And so they dip test looking for the larval activity. If they find it, they treat it with a bacteria, which is really specific as far as what it controls. So in that type of water, really the only thing it is controlling is the mosquito larva.
And it's just a pellet, it's a spray?
Yep, it's a bacteria, dried bacteria that's on dried corn cobs.
Oh.
And it's dispersed through a backpack sprayer and applicator in like if you're in a tall cattails, 7-foot cattails, you've got to.
Someone sees that person out there, that's
exactly,
what they're doing?
That's what they're doing. They're applying the BTI in an even manner. And so, and that's our intention. Our intention is to try to keep the mosquitoes in the water or beat them while they're in the water.
Yeah.
Don't let them become adults, because the simple part of the whole West Nile virus plan is that if you don't get bit, you don't get West Nile.
Right.
It's just that simple. So if we can keep them from hatching out, that's what we prefer to do. Case in point, you get in from 2008, 2011, everything's great, we have no problems. 2012, it got active towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
And of course this year, at the beginning of August, it was really ramping up. And the weather conditions were just right. The moisture followed by the high temperatures, really reduces down the amount of time it takes a mosquito to go from egg to adult. I mean, they can go from egg to an adult when it's in the 90+ range in the 4 to 5 day range.
Oh.
So, and in the cooler months of the year, or say May, September, the shoulder seasons to the summer, it can be 2 weeks. So it gives, as you can imagine, if you're a technician out there trying to catch those
more time
mosquitoes
to
in the
get
water.
them in the water.
Exactly.
So when you say things are heating up, so they were doing dip testing in some water sites, and then we also have live traps.
Yes, we have a network of 53 live traps this year that we set on a weekly basis. And this is part of our integrated pest management approach to the mosquito management system. And the one of the key components of an integrated pest management approach is monitoring your pest. And of course, that's the adult mosquito. And then setting thresholds for action when you hit certain levels of risk. So what happens is we're trapping 53 traps a week. And we're reporting that out on the Colorado Mosquito Control dashboard.
So I can go there and find a trap closest to my neighborhood and see like I'm in the red or I'm whatever that might look like.
You can click week to week and see whenever the traps in your neighborhood start popping hot. And you can also see how many mosquitoes that we're capturing in that particular trap on a per week basis. And it's got a radio dial on it, so if you see the red part of the radio dial getting bigger and bigger, that's the Culex variety that carries the virus, are becoming more popular in that trap. Because we've got other mosquitoes that don't carry the virus, and we're not focused on those. We're not a nuisance program. We don't spray just because people are being bothered by the mosquitoes.
Which some communities do.
Right, exactly.
Interesting, okay.
Our purpose of our program is to reduce the incidence of human West Nile virus cases, but at the same time, try to limit the adverse human health and environmental impacts. And that's one of the reasons why we use the BTI or the Bacillus thuringiensis bacteria to try to control the larva, because that's a natural product. So we're really trying to be sensitive of the environmental impacts and the human health impacts. I mean, adulticiding, when we get to that point, and that's a big concern for a lot of people in town, but we only do that when there's an elevated risk of West Nile. And that's it.
So this is where I hear the term vector a lot.
Yeah, vector index.
The vector index is what does that mean?
Well, a vector index was a way, it was created in conversation with the CDC, which happens to be here in our town. They worked with some different individuals and groups to come up with a numeric value based on historical data. They went back and they did the calculation, and they looked at when they had outbreaks and where would be the best triggers to do response techniques. So they came up with this vector index, which takes the information that we get out of those 53 traps, all right, and talks about the abundance and how many of those traps are positive, and it gives you a number so that you can set a threshold. So, for instance, our threshold, which is pretty common for most of the Front Range, is 0.75. And when we hit 0.75, that could trigger some actions, whether it's enhanced media, public outreach, adulticiding. Any of those types of things could happen with that particular trigger. But there's other things that go along with that trigger. It's not just vector index, it's actually abundance of the mosquitoes. We have to have at least as many mosquitoes as if we have in the past by one standard deviation above that. So you've got to have a lot of mosquitoes. There's got to be infection. This year also was a human case element in there where we had to have reported human cases before we'd ever get to the point where we would consider adulticiding. But unfortunately this year, first week or so of August, we got to that point. And
so it happened earlier than maybe in past years?
No, I wouldn't say it happened earlier. I mean, we had some positive traps that popped up at the beginning of June, but then they disappeared, kind of went off the radar for several weeks. We had a little cooler June, if you remember, but then July hit. And July we had that rain and heat, and heat, which really elevated the activity of the mosquitoes. And the virus is always there. It's just a matter of how much it's going to amplify through the season. And that's our whole our whole goal with the program is we want to try to break, the transmission cycle.
Right.
All right. You're never gonna eliminate every mosquito.
Right.
You're never gonna get West Nile out of this area now. It's endemic.
It's here.
Yes, it's here forever. So all we're trying to do is break that transmission cycle. So what happens is, and that's why we have to spray. A lot of people ask me, why do you spray on one day and then wait 3 or 4 days to spray the second time? Well, you do that because you want to the first day when you go out and spray, your intention is to knock down all the West Nile virus positive mosquitoes that you can that are host seeking.
All the adults that are flying around.
The females that are looking for a blood meal so they can reproduce. Because they have to have that blood. I hate to get into that detail, but they have to have that so that they can go through the reproduction cycle, okay? The problem is there's a portion of those mosquitoes that have already done that, and they're going to lay eggs, all right? And because of the metabolism activity of the mosquito and the rate that we put the product out, the permethrin, that the ones that are host seeking are susceptible to the insecticide. So it's a contact insecticide and it kills them.
So we knock those down.
But the ones that are seeking to lay eggs, their metabolism's going too fast, they process it and it doesn't knock them down.
Wow.
So then they go lay their eggs.
And then they get back up in the air.
And they have to lay their eggs after they get that blood meal in so many days. So that's why you have to wait 3 to 5 days to spray the second time to catch them in the air.
Okay.
So you're trying to knock down both
Right.
kind of like generations of it. And then what you're looking to do is people ask me about abundance all the time. Well, how come mosquito abundance didn't go down so much? And it's like, you know what? We're not trying to kill every mosquito. That's not our intention. We're a mitigation program for the disease. So what we're trying to do is break that transmission cycle. Looking at that risk index is a good way to see if you broke that transmission cycle. For instance, this summer, we went from 0.85 before we sprayed to 0.25 after we sprayed. Pretty good result.
Yeah.
And then, you hope, especially in the timing that we were doing it, you hope Mother Nature helps you. And, with the coming of fall. This year, boy, fall landed pretty hard the 1st of September with the flood. And actually that, in a way, helped us.
Wash everything out?
It flushed out all of our larval sites.
Okay.
It could have even started taking out some of the mosquitoes that are starting to overwinter in the storm drains and things like that.
Yeah, okay.
But the funny thing was, 14 days after the flood ended, I started getting phone calls because people were saying, I'm getting eaten alive. And really what that was the hatching out of floodwater mosquitoes. That's why they're called floodwater mosquitoes.
They're not the carrier.
They're the ones that don't carry the virus. So they turn around and they hatch out and people are calling and say, hey, aren't you going to spray? And no, we don't do a nuisance program. We're all about the disease mitigation.
So this is interesting. I love Fort Collins. I've been here forever. You've actually probably been here longer than me. We're such a diverse community, I'm guessing. But so you're going to get calls from people that say there are too many mosquitoes, we need you to spray. And I'm betting you get a lot of calls saying, oh my God, how dare you spray?
Right.
So it's a challenge as a city government to balance the diverse values and needs in our community. So how do you, thankfully we do have a data-driven system that we have developed and come up with, but I'm sure that's still hard for folks.
Oh yeah, it's really hard, and that's why, even last night I was at the Air Quality Advisory Board meeting and talking to them about the update for the last season and where we're going and the review process we're about to undertake. We went to council on the 29th of October.
Tell us about what the plan is.
On 29th of October, we go to council, and we got some direction from council, some feedback. They would like to see a comprehensive program document, so we have all of our information in one place that talks about, how we set the program up the way we did, what research we used to support that, all that in one particular place.
So we have all those pieces. They're just, if someone wanted to say, show me everything.
You have to dig for it a little bit.
Okay.
So we'd like to bring it farther out front and then, also have it on the website. We do have, our policy, our program response guidelines, all of our annual reports, all right on the fcgov.com /
And the whole
West Nile
program
Virus.
is adopted by ordinance.
Yes.
So there's actually code language for it as well.
So, the things that we heard from council at the work session was the comprehensive program manual. They also asked us to try to include some different perspectives on the technical advisory committee.
Okay.
And we're starting to look at maybe some organic farmers and seeing if they're available to participate in the winter review. Might be some beekeepers that would be interested.
Sure.
We want to get people's perspectives from other angles than just maybe necessarily the scientific or environmental, consultant type, perspective. So, we just want to try to make sure that we're being transparent as possible and trying to let people know that, our goal is to have the best program that we can and minimize those impacts. as best as we can. We don't want to see people get sick, and of course we don't want to do anything that would cause anybody to get sick or
Right.
damage the environment.
Right.
So it's definitely a balancing act. I tell people all the time it's a risk management issue is really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that don't like wearing DEET
Right.
or any type of repellent, and if you're going out in the middle of July in the evening and you're not going to wear a repellent,
Especially if you're like me, you're going to get chewed up alive.
you're not going to wear long sleeves, then you are running a risk. You may think it's very small, so other people may tell you it's very high, but it's a risk, and
Yeah.
you make that decision. So it is a risk management issue. But so we heard from council about the manual. We heard from council about expanding the technical advisory committee, and then they would also like us to bring back options for our adult deciding operations.
Okay.
And that could, be the whole gamut. We ran into a situation this year where we had some activity in town, but in the southeast side of town, and the county health director was making recommendations for us to spray that southeast side of town.
Yeah.
And we did not follow those recommendations just because we had not hit our thresholds in our program
okay.
response guidelines.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at those thresholds again and make sure that they're the right ones
Mm-hmm.
and that they're being applied properly. We have a 3-person advisory panel that helps review those thresholds whenever a recommendation is made to make sure we are applying them properly. And so, we want to make sure that that's happening, but we want to make sure we've got the right thresholds,
Right.
that we are reacting in a proactive manner, not a reactive manner, so that we are trying to achieve the program goals and purpose.
So sometimes you hear, go see what other communities are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find best practices.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the type of process or information that would be valuable in this case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we first started this program, we were very fortunate in this community to have our partners at CSU
Mm-hmm.
and their resources over there. We have entomologists and scientists who've studied mosquitoes their whole life that work over at CSU,
Right.
and they happen to sit on our technical advisory
Oh,
committee.
good.
We have a representative from the CDC who heads the arbovirus unit for them, for the country.
Wow.
Happens to sit on our board. Now, these people do it as volunteers.
Yeah.
They're not representing, their organization,
organization,
but
okay.
it's just fortunate that we have this type of a resource inside of our community.
And their expertise.
Yeah. The best practices of other communities, we do have resources in town, but we have had conversations with some of our council members where they pointed to some other communities like Boulder and Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
They asked us to investigate, and we have been in contact with them. And we have a lot in common with the Boulder program. The
Yep.
Fort Worth program, they're still developing in a written form.
Okay.
They had their outbreak years early on, and then the program fell off to the side, and then all of a sudden they had an outbreak year in 2012 again. And so they were reacting, and we've shared our program with them. But, we look to the CDC and the EPA for guidance as far as how to develop a program.
Mm-hmm.
And they both recommend an integrated pest management approach. And that's
Which means you have larviciding and you have adulticiding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could have a whole gamut of tools, but really you're using your most least invasive tools earlier on when the risk is low.
Right.
Okay, and you set thresholds for that risk. And if you hit certain thresholds, of course, different tools become available to
Right.
utilize to try to knock that risk down. Like I always tell people, we're not a nuisance program. We don't spray every week of the summer.
Right.
It's not something that we want to do. We want to try to reduce the risk of West Nile through all the other tools that we have, including people's personal choices.
Right.
People can take a lot of personal responsibility in this. They can have a free backyard inspection.
I was just going to say, tell us about the backyard inspection
If
piece.
you have a backyard that you think you've got a lot of mosquitoes and you can't understand why you've got so many mosquitoes, you can pick up the phone and call Colorado Mosquito Control. They'll come out for free. They'll inspect your backyard. They'll dip test it for you when you're there. If they find water, they'll show you the larva if they find it. And they'll tell you the best way to get rid of it. Sometimes the best way is not a pesticide at all.
It's just fixing your gutter.
It's
in
fixing
the way
a gutter.
Drains.
It's fixing something in your
Turning
yard
that
that's
bucket over.
holding water. A 5-gallon bucket. If you flipped it over, it's not producing mosquitoes anymore.
How much standing water do you need?
Oh, if you've got a small potted plant,
Right.
with the saucer underneath, and it's holding that water.
You've been to my house? No.
And it's getting grungy because they like grungy water. They need that
Okay.
bacteria to feed the larva.
Yeah.
So if you've got that water in there, then and it's standing, that could be a source of mosquito. And it does not take very much water at all to produce thousands of mosquitoes.
So if people like to have a bird bath, though, can you just flush that out every
Yep.
few days and
Yep.
you'll be all right?
That's perfect.
Okay.
I always tell people about 3 days or so.
Yeah.
If you see anything growing in it, you flush it out
That's time.
because they need that bacteria. They need that decay and that
Okay.
rich nutrients for the larva to grow. So, so that's just a real simple thing. And a lot of times people just, you can't see the forest for the trees because you live there.
Right.
But all of a sudden
Yeah.
you get one of these technicians from CMC come in and they're like, ooh, yeah, that's a problem right there. And let me show you why.
Yeah.
And they go over and they show you the larva. And you're like, wow. And, suddenly you can help take care of your own
Right.
little piece of the environment and talking to your neighbors.
And that's what we need, right?
know.
Is a team approach.
Right.
Right. If people do what they can and we do what we can.
Right.
I'm curious, we've talked about collar mosquito control and calling them and looking at the traps and the website. Do we link to that from our FC.gov site?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We have that link right on our webpage.
What is the fcgov.com/?
West Nile.
Okay, so people can look at all that. And is the back data there? So even though we're not in
The
the
annual
middle of
reports for
Okay,
years are
so
listed
people
there.
can go look at that and check that out.
They can see all that.
If there are people who are, very engaged and want to be engaged in this upcoming review and process, I'm assuming there'll be a public outreach plan and opportunities for that.
Our Communication and Public Involvement Office is putting together our outreach plan.
Okay.
And that's going to include some open forums so that people
Okay.
can have a chance to give input, bring information to the table if they think we're missing it.
Yep.
We try to be as diligent as we can about looking at peer-reviewed, professionally published papers so that, we've got an assurance that everything's accurate in these papers that we're looking at.
Right.
So we try to use those as much as possible. But if there's something someone feels like we're missing, we'd love to hear it.
Let's see it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of a naive question. Is there any way to predict, like, oh, it's going to be bad this year, or, oh, this year it's going to be okay? Is that
Well, I haven't seen a good predictive model yet.
okay?
So I wish I could do that
Eight
for
ball?
you. Yeah, the 8-ball might be the best. No, there is some work being done over at CSU about the temperature, your average temperature in the spring, and how fast that ramps up, and could that be a predictor of what our mosquito activity is going to be? There is some work being done there that's showing some promise, but really, you would think that in a year where we had a snowstorm on the 1st of May,
You think it would knock it down?
you'd think it would knock it down, that we'd have a nice, easy year and all that. But when all of a sudden, June was very nice. It was very pleasant. But then all of a sudden we hit July and we hit that rain, heat. It's just a bad combination of things.
Yep.
And so it's Mother Nature.
And regardless, we're going to be out doing our larvicide program.
Right.
When does that start?
That starts right now, the way our contract is written, it runs from June 1st to the end of August.
Okay.
Like I said, we're going to be reviewing our program this winter, and there might be some recommendations to change some of those dates or some of those triggers like I was talking about in the response guidelines.
Right.
So we'll see what comes out of that
Yep.
towards the end of February after the Technical Advisory Committee gets together and makes their recommendations.
So those recommendations end of February, early March, so that we're good to go by June, is what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Even this summer, there was some criticism of our program as far as maybe acting a little bit too late. Some people said, we shouldn't adulticide at all. We're acting too soon.
Right.
We try to do our reviews in the winter. We try to do our continuous improvement model where we plan, do, check, act every
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
And so we take this opportunity in the winter when it's 30 degrees.
Yay.
And we try to review all this information that we have and make improvements to our program. And then we put our program in place and we run through the summer.
Yep.
And we try not to change horses midstream,
Right. Can't do that.
because we feel like we've got a pretty good process. This program has been acting under the policy since 2008. Is it perfect? No, I don't think it's perfect because you can't predict all the environmental inputs that you're going to have.
Right.
But at the same time, it gets better every time we go through this, and we're trying to be more comprehensive, more transparent, try to be as responsive to the community as we can,
Right.
and still meet the program goals
Yep.
of protecting the human health from the West Nile virus risk. So, we'll keep doing that continuous improvement model, and we'll just see what we've got when the end of February comes around and the recommendations go to council.
Well, perfect. And thanks for all your good work. I know it can be hard.
It's interesting,
Yes.
for sure. I meet some very, very interesting, passionate people on all sides of the issue, and
Yep.
that's one thing that does make our community great. That's what I was telling our Air Quality Advisory Board last night, is that, I think one of the things that sets our community apart from other communities is the involvement of the public.
We're lucky, yeah.
There's certain things that maybe other communities have some involvement because there's interest in certain things in their communities. But across the board, we've got volunteers
Yeah, we do.
who come and share their information, their knowledge, their life skills on our boards and commissions, and I think that's what really makes our community unique.
It's true.
So,
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for joining us. If you are interested in this topic, please stay tuned and follow it. There will be a public engagement plan coming forward as we go into this review, and as Mike said, looking for recommendations coming in late February. Thanks so much.